What if the key to true wisdom wasn't intelligence, experience, or even education, but something deeper, something spiritual? The Book of Proverbs makes a bold and unexpected claim. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Verbs 1:7. This simple yet profound truth is the foundation upon which all wisdom is built. But what does it really mean to fear the Lord? For many, the word fear carries a negative connotation, something to avoid, something that paralyzes. But in biblical terms, fearing the Lord isn't about terror or dread. It's about a deep reverence, a recognition of God's greatness, holiness, and authority. It's an awareness that He is the creator of all things, the ultimate source of wisdom, justice, and truth. To fear the Lord is to acknowledge that we are not the masters of our own destiny, that our understanding is limited, and that we need His guidance. King Solomon, the primary author of Proverbs, understood this firsthand. When he became king, he could have asked God for anything: wealth, power, or military success. But instead, he prayed for wisdom to lead his people well. 1 Kings 3:9. God was so pleased with Solomon's request that he granted him wisdom beyond measure, making him the wisest man of his time. But even Solomon, with all his knowledge, emphasized over and over that wisdom starts with fearing the Lord. Without it, human wisdom is flawed, short-sighted, and ultimately meaningless. This truth isn't just a religious concept. It has practical implications for everyday life. When we fear the Lord, we develop a sense of humility, knowing that we don't have all the answers. We become more teachable, willing to receive correction and grow. We start making better choices, because we are no longer just chasing personal success, but seeking to align our lives with God's truth. In contrast, those who reject the fear of the Lord rely on their own understanding, which often leads to pride, poor decisions, and eventual downfall. Proverbs warns that there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. Proverbs 14:12. True wisdom isn't about figuring everything out on our own. It's about trusting God's guidance and allowing His wisdom to shape our lives. So, how do we cultivate this kind of reverence? It starts with spending time in God's Word, seeking His will through prayer, and making decisions based on His principles rather than our own desires. The fear of the Lord isn't meant to push us away from God. It's meant to draw us closer to recognize His love, His authority, and His desire to lead us toward a life of wisdom, peace, and purpose. Only when we fear the Lord can we truly begin to understand what it means to be wise. Who you surround yourself with shapes the course of your life in ways you might not even realize. The Book of Proverbs warns us that our relationships aren't just casual connections. They have the power to lead us toward wisdom or destruction. Proverbs 13:20 puts it plainly. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a principle that plays out in real life, time and time again. Imagine Solomon, the wisest king in history, surrounded by advisors, leaders, and foreign envoys. At the beginning of his reign, he sought godly counsel, surrounding himself with people who encouraged him to follow the Lord. But as time passed, his relationships changed. He formed alliances through political marriages with foreign women, and many of them brought their pagan influences into his life. Slowly, his heart drifted away from God. The very man who wrote that wisdom comes from fearing the Lord allowed his relationships to lead him astray. His downfall wasn't sudden. It was gradual, the result of small compromises that added up over time. Proverbs reminds us that the people we let into our lives shape our thinking, values, and even our faith. Have you ever noticed that the more time you spend around a certain group of people, the more you start adopting their attitudes, habits, and even speech? That's because relationships are formative. They mold us, whether we realize it or not. This is why Proverbs repeatedly warns against keeping company with foolish, reckless, or hot-tempered people, because their behavior is contagious. Proverbs 22:24-25 cautions, "Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. This isn't just about avoiding bad influences. It's also about actively seeking out wise, godly relationships. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." Real friendships aren't just about having fun or feeling comfortable. They're about challenging each other to grow. A true friend is someone who will tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. They won't just flatter you. They'll call you out when you're wrong, encourage you when you're struggling, and push you to be better. In today's world, friendships are often treated as disposable people come and go, and social media has reduced relationships to likes, follows, and quick interactions. But Proverbs calls us to something deeper. It urges us to be intentional about our relationships, to surround ourselves with people who will point us toward God's wisdom, not away from it. So, take a moment to reflect. Who are you walking with? Are your relationships leading you closer to wisdom or pulling you away from it? The company you keep has the power to shape your destiny. Choose wisely. Words are far more powerful than we often realize. They can build up or tear down, bring healing or cause destruction. The Book of Proverbs makes this truth crystal clear. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Proverbs 18:21. Every day, with every conversation, we are either planting seeds of encouragement and wisdom or scattering words that can wound and divide. King Solomon, known for his unmatched wisdom, understood firsthand the weight of words. As a ruler, his decrees could shape a nation, his judgments could determine justice, and his words could bring either peace or conflict. In his younger years, he used his wisdom to settle disputes and guide his people with clarity. But later in life, as his heart turned away from God, his words became mixed with compromise and carelessness. His own story stands as a warning. How we speak affects not just ourselves, but the people and world around us. Have you ever been deeply impacted by something someone said? Maybe an encouraging word lifted your spirits and gave you confidence, or perhaps a harsh comment left a scar that took years to heal. Proverbs acknowledges this reality and urges us to be mindful of how we use our words. Proverbs 12:18 paints a vivid picture. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Reckless words spoken in anger, carelessness, or pride can cut deep, leaving wounds that linger long after they are spoken. On the other hand, words spoken with wisdom and kindness have the power to heal, restore, and bring hope. Proverbs also reminds us that the way we respond in difficult moments matters. Proverbs 15:1 teaches, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." In moments of conflict, we often have two choices: to react impulsively, escalating the situation, or to respond with patience and wisdom, diffusing tension. Solomon recognized that a single word could change the outcome of an argument or even an entire relationship. But words don't just impact others, they shape our own hearts as well. The Book of James compares the tongue to a rudder that steers a ship, emphasizing how the direction of our speech determines the course of our lives. James 3:4-5. Proverbs 16:24 enforces this idea, saying, "Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones." Just as honey was a rare and precious gift in ancient times, so too are kind, wise, and thoughtful words in today's world. So, how do you use your words? Are they bringing life or spreading destruction? Proverbs calls us to speak with wisdom, intention, and love, because the words we say today have the power to shape lives for years to come. Success and prosperity don't come from luck or shortcuts. They are the result of diligence, discipline, and wise financial choices. The Book of Proverbs repeatedly emphasizes the importance of hard work, integrity, and financial responsibility, showing that a life built on these principles leads to lasting stability and blessing. Proverbs 10:4 puts it plainly, "Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth." This isn't just a motivational quote, it's a universal truth that applies to every area of life. King Solomon, one of the wealthiest men in history, understood that wealth wasn't the goal, wisdom and handling it was. He warns against laziness, not because work itself is sacred, but because laziness leads to dependence, missed opportunities, and ultimately, lack. Proverbs 6:6-8 drives this point home with a simple but powerful lesson. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. The ant doesn't wait for someone to push it into action. It works hard, preparing for the future without needing constant supervision. In today's world, it's easy to get caught up in the idea of instant success. Social media showcases stories of people who seem to achieve wealth overnight. But Proverbs warns against chasing after get-rich-quick schemes. Proverbs 12:11 states, "Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense." Hard work and consistency, not reckless gambling or impulsive decisions, lead to real and lasting success. But financial wisdom goes beyond just working hard. It's also about managing money responsibly. Proverbs 22:7 warns, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender." Debt can quickly become a trap, leading to financial stress and loss of freedom. In a culture where credit cards and loans make it easy to spend beyond our means, Proverbs urges us to live within our income, save wisely, and avoid unnecessary debt. Generosity is another key theme in Proverbs. It challenges the common mindset that holding on to wealth leads to security, instead teaching that giving brings true prosperity. Proverbs 11:24-25 states, "One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." True financial wisdom isn't just about accumulating wealth. It's about using it to bless others and honor God. So, ask yourself, are you working with diligence and purpose? Are you managing your finances wisely, avoiding debt, and practicing generosity? Proverbs calls us to a life of hard work, financial responsibility, and a heart that trusts God's provision, because true wealth is measured not just in money, but in wisdom, integrity, and generosity. Integrity isn't just about being honest when people are watching. It's about living in a way that is consistent, truthful, and aligned with God's wisdom in every situation. The Book of Proverbs repeatedly teaches that walking in integrity leads to security, peace, and blessing, while dishonesty and deception ultimately lead to downfall. Proverbs 10:9 makes this clear. "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out." A person of integrity doesn't have to worry about being exposed because their life is built on truth, not lies. King Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, understood the importance of integrity in leadership, relationships, and daily life. In his early years as king, he ruled with fairness and wisdom, bringing prosperity to Israel. But as time passed, his heart drifted, and his compromises in faith and morality weakened his kingdom. His story is a powerful reminder that integrity isn't a one-time choice. It's a daily commitment to doing what is right, even when no one else sees. Proverbs 11:3 reinforces this truth. "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity." Integrity acts like a compass, keeping us on the right path, helping us make wise decisions and protecting us from regret. But when we choose deception, dishonesty, or compromise, we eventually suffer the consequences. It might not happen immediately, but Proverbs warns that the truth always comes to light. In today's world, where cutting corners, exaggerating the truth, and prioritizing success over character are common, Proverbs calls us to a higher standard. It reminds us that true success isn't about wealth or recognition, it's about character. Proverbs 28:6 states, "Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways." This challenges the modern mindset that values profit over principle. God's measure of success is different. He values righteousness, honesty, and faithfulness more than worldly achievements. Integrity doesn't just affect us, it impacts the people around us. Proverbs 27 says, The righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after him. When we live with honesty and moral uprightness, we leave a legacy that blesses future generations. Children, friends, and co-workers all benefit from seeing someone who chooses to do what is right, even when it's difficult. So, take a moment to reflect. Are you living a life of integrity? Are your actions, words, and decisions aligned with truth? Proverbs teaches that walking in integrity isn't always the easiest path, but it is the one that leads to lasting security, peace, and God's blessing. Book of Proverbs makes it clear that self-control isn't a sign of weakness, but of strength. Netanyahu often sees anger as power and venting frustration as a right. Proverbs teaches that true wisdom lies in restraint, patience, and knowing when to stay silent. Proverbs 16:32 puts it plainly, "Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city." This means that conquering your own emotions is even more powerful than military victory, because a person who cannot control their temper ends up being controlled by it. King Solomon, who ruled a vast kingdom and dealt with conflicts daily, understood the destructive potential of unchecked anger. A single rash decision, a careless word, or an impulsive reaction could spark war, break relationships, or ruin a reputation. He warns in Proverbs 29:11, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." This verse paints a stark contrast between wisdom and folly. A wise person doesn't suppress their emotions, but they control how they express them, choosing words and actions that lead to peace rather than destruction. But controlling anger isn't easy. It requires humility, patience, and most importantly, reliance on God. Proverbs 19:11 gives a powerful insight. A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. In a world that encourages us to react quickly, Proverbs challenges us to pause, reflect, and choose patience over rage. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong or getting even, it's letting go, forgiving, and refusing to let anger dictate our choices. At the same time, Proverbs acknowledges that anger itself is not a sin. It's how we handle it that matters. Righteous anger, when directed toward injustice or wrongdoing, can be powerful. But if left unchecked, anger quickly turns into bitterness, resentment, or reckless decisions. Proverbs 14:29 warns, "Whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly." The key is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to step back. In today's world, where frustration and outrage are constantly encouraged on social media, in politics, and even in personal relationships, Proverbs offers a better way. Proverbs 15:18 reminds us, "A hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel." Imagine how many arguments, misunderstandings, and regrets could be avoided if we embraced this wisdom. So, ask yourself, do you control your anger, or does your anger control you? Proverbs teaches that true strength isn't about overpowering others. It's about mastering yourself, choosing patience over impulse, and allowing God to guide your emotions rather than being ruled by them. In a world that constantly tells us to be independent, to follow our own instincts, and to take control of our own destiny, the Book of Proverbs presents a radically different perspective. True wisdom begins with trusting in the Lord completely, not relying on our own understanding. Proverbs 3:5-6 states, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight." This is not just a comforting verse. It's a fundamental truth about how we should live our lives. King Solomon, despite his unmatched wisdom, knew that human knowledge was limited and flawed. Even with all his intelligence and experience, he recognized that his own reasoning could not compare to God's perfect wisdom. That's why he repeatedly warned against placing too much confidence in our own understanding. Proverbs 28:26 reinforces this by saying, "Those who trust in themselves are fools, but those who walk in wisdom are kept safe." This isn't an insult, it's a reality check. When we rely solely on ourselves, We are blind to the bigger picture, unable to see what lies ahead, and vulnerable to making decisions based on fear, pride, or incomplete knowledge. One of the most powerful images in Proverbs is found in Proverbs 16:9. In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. This verse doesn't mean we shouldn't make plans, set goals, or work hard, but it does remind us that God has the final say. We can prepare all we want, but in the end, God's wisdom prevails, and trusting Him leads to the best possible outcome. But trusting God isn't always easy. When life is uncertain, when prayers go unanswered, or when things don't go the way we expected, it's tempting to take matters into our own hands. Yet Proverbs teaches that real peace comes from surrendering control to God. Proverbs 19:21 says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." Trusting God doesn't mean we will always understand why things happen. It means we believe He knows what's best, even when we don't. A powerful real-life example of this truth comes from the story of Jim Elliot, a missionary who devoted his life to spreading the gospel. Despite his careful planning, his mission to reach an indigenous tribe ended in his tragic death. To the world, it seemed like a failure. But years later, the very people who once rejected him came to faith through the seeds he had planted. His story reflects Proverbs 3:6. When we trust God, even when things seem uncertain, He directs our steps in ways we could never imagine. So, ask yourself, are you leaning on your own understanding, or are you truly trusting God? Proverbs teaches that real wisdom, real peace, and real success don't come from self-reliance, but from surrendering to God's plan, knowing that His wisdom is far greater than ours.